What's going on, sports fans? It's your boy, Sports Truth RW. You can subscribe me here, hit that like button. Make sure you do that. Also, you can follow me on Instagram at drmega.rw. That's DRMEGA.RW. I have about 10,000 followers on Instagram. Please, every time you give me a follow, I do a shout out for you. So please follow me. I want to talk about the Big 12 conference today. The Big 12 is very interesting right now. We all know that Texas probably has a top 5 recruiting class coming in. Quinn Evers, the quarterback for Texas. He's the first player ever by the NIL to have a $1 million contract. That's a big deal. The NIL is making a big difference in college football these days. The Big 12 discussing 6 teams to join the conference. Arizona State, Utah, Colorado, Oregon, and Washington. All of these teams are trying to be part of the fish, trying to get out of the Pac-12 and get into the Big 12. Today, I also want to talk about my top 5 Big 12 teams that's coming into this following fall. That's Iowa State, that's Oklahoma State, Baylor, and Texas. And so I want to talk about Iowa State. I think they're finished 5th in the Big 12. Iowa State is very good at home. I think in the last 3 seasons, they only lost 4 games at home. Iowa State has a quarterback in Hunter Deckers, Jarrell Brock as the running back. If you don't know who Hunter Deckers is, he set all the state of Iowa high school records as a quarterback in passing yards, passing touchdowns, completion percentages. Jabril Bach and Hunter Deckers will be in that backfield, and so they will be first full-time starters this coming season. Wide receiver, I think at wide receiver, Iowa State probably have a top 3 wide receiver in the conference in Xavier Hutchinson. Xavier Hutchinson will be a senior this coming year. Defense, Iowa State has 2 of the best defensive players in the conference as well, with Anthony Johnson and Will McDonald. Will McDonald will definitely be a first-round pick probably in the NFL draft because he is a monster. Trust me. The returns on defense, I think they had the fewest returns of starters. That's my only question of experience. But they do have some stars on that team, with on the defensive side of the ball and that wide receiver Xavier Hutchinson. I predict that Iowa State, they would go 75 this year. I think Iowa State would go 75. If you look at their schedule, September 3rd, they play Southeastern Missouri State at home. That's a win. They will play Iowa away. I think they will lose against Iowa. I really think so. They play the University of Ohio at home. That's a W. You can put a W there for that schedule. They play Baylor at home. They're losing to Baylor. Trust me. Kansas away. They're winning that game. Kansas State, I think they're winning that game. Texas, I think they should lose that game. Texas has a lot to offer this season, and I would not be surprised if Texas play in a Big 12 championship game. I would not be surprised about that at all. Oklahoma, they're losing that game to Oklahoma. Oklahoma may have a lot of things that happen this offseason, but trust me, it would not be a big drop-off for Oklahoma. They still will be competing. They will be definitely in that top 5 of the Big 12 conference. West Virginia, they will beat West Virginia, I think. I think that would be a good game because West Virginia did have one of the top 5 or 6 best defenses in the conference last year. Oklahoma State, that is a away game. They will lose to Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State is my pick of winning the Big 12 this year. The head coach, Mr. Gundy, I think that he's been doing real well. He's one of the winningest coaches in college football right now. If you go back and look at his schedule, his stats and everything, Mike Gundy was 149-69 as the head coach of Oklahoma State. Since 2001, part of Oklahoma State. He's been the assistant coach, but he's been the head coach of Oklahoma State since 2005, and he did win a Big 12 championship 2011, so it can be done. Let me get right in with Texas Tech. Go back to Ohio State. Texas Tech, they're losing to they will beat Texas Tech. I think they'll beat Texas Tech. TCU, I think they'll beat TCU, of course. So I got Iowa State going 75. So I got them fifth in the conference. Fourth in the conference, I want to go with, I got Texas. It's between, now 1 through 4 is real fishy to me. I got Oklahoma State, Baylor, Texas, and Oklahoma. Those are the top 4 teams I got in the Big 12. And so it's interesting to me because let's go to Baylor. Baylor, they start off the season playing Albany. I think that's in New York. That's a win. I don't care who they got out there on the field out there. Baylor's beating Albany, University of Albany. Now, BYU, that is an away game. They're going down to BYU. And if you don't know about BYU, ask all the Utah fans in the Pac-12. BYU beat Utah. Texas State, that's a win for Baylor. Now, Iowa State, they have that game away. Now, Iowa State only lost 1 game at home last season. 1 game. And like I said earlier, in the past 3 seasons, Iowa State only lost 4 games. So I do have a question mark about that game when they playing Baylor, Iowa State and Baylor. Oklahoma State, I think they'll lose that game. I think they'll lose to Oklahoma State at home. West Virginia, I think they'll beat West Virginia. Kansas, I think they'll beat Kansas. Texas Tech, I think they'll beat Texas Tech. Oklahoma, I think they're losing to Oklahoma this year. Oh, I'm sorry. I got them losing to Oklahoma this year. I think that, this will be the year that a lot of teams get some revenge on Oklahoma because they lost their head coach, Lincoln Riley. They have lost a lot of players in the transfer portal, things like that. Kansas State, I think they'll beat Kansas State and TCU. Now, this away game, the last game of the season for the Big 12, Baylor versus Texas. This is a big game, guys. Texas has a lot of firepower this season. I got them losing to Texas this year. So I have Baylor going 8-4. 8-4. Baylor has quite a few players that I'm looking at. Jerry Bohannon, he's returning this year. If you don't know about Jerry Bohannon, he's a 6'3", 221-pound quarterback, and he was also a former Elite 11 quarterback coming out of high school. So he's really good, and he may be an NFL draft pick in the future. Baylor is returning with one of the best offensive lines in the country. They got 4 starters coming back on their offensive line for Baylor. Defense-wise, I think they lost a lot on defense. They lost the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year last year, and they got this guy coming in, the starter, LaRondo Johnson, taking over the starting job. They are returning the best defense in the Big 12. So they did have the best defense in the Big 12. But, losing a lot. They had the best defense in the Big 12 because they had the Defensive Player of the Year in the Big 12, and he's off in the NFL, And so I got them going 8-4 this season. Let's go over to Texas. Texas, guys, I shared earlier that Texas is loaded. They are. Goodness gracious. On offense, they are loaded. They have Quinn Evers. Remember, I told you guys that Quinn Evers is the first player ever to have $1 million contract with the NIL. Byron Robinson is their running back. Byron Robinson had over 1,100 yards and 11 touchdowns last season. He is the best running back in the Big 12, trust me. Byron Robinson. Alabama wish they had this guy. I think Alabama went after this guy when he was available at the time, but he went to Texas. The best wide receiver in the Big 12, they got him too. They got Xavier Worthy. Xavier Worthy will be the best wide receiver in the Big 12, no doubt about it. The questions about Texas, their defense. The defense by Texas defense hasn't been the same since probably Vince Young played, man. Texas defense is trash right now. And so they would have to do a lot of developments on their defensive side of the ball. But I do have Texas going 8-4 this year. But I would not be surprised if Texas played in the Big 12 championship. I would not be surprised about that at all. I mean, they have a lot of talent. And if that defensive coordinator can turn things around, hey, sky's the limit. Let's start with Texas' schedule for this year. September the 3rd, they playing Louisiana Monroe. That's a W. Put a W there. Alabama. Everybody looking for this game. Everybody think Alabama is going to roll over Texas, but Texas has a lot of history. I would not be surprised if Texas keep this a fourth quarter game and Alabama just roll out late in the game, maybe by 2 touchdowns. But I think first half will be competitive. I really think so. University of Texas San Antonio, that's a W for Texas. Texas Tech, that's a W for Texas. West Virginia, that's a W. Now, they playing Oklahoma October the 8th. October the 8th, they playing the University of Oklahoma Sooners. Guys, like I said earlier, I think that Oklahoma lost a lot during the transfer portal. They lost their coach, Lincoln Riley. This would probably be the year. If Texas was to beat Oklahoma, this should be the year. This should be the year. Because next year, I'm telling you, Oklahoma will be better. But I got the W for Texas beating Oklahoma. Iowa State. Now, that is a good game. They playing Iowa State at home. Now, if they play Iowa State away with that kind of home record that Iowa State has over the last 3 seasons, they will lose to Iowa State. But since they have Iowa State at home, it's a home game for Texas. They will beat Iowa State. Oklahoma State. I have Oklahoma State losing only 1 game in the Big 12. I got Oklahoma State winning the Big 12. They're not beating Oklahoma State this year. Away game, Kansas State, I got them beating Kansas State. TCU, I got them beating TCU. Kansas was the worst team in the Big 12 last year. They're beating the brakes off Kansas. Baylor, now this is a big game. This is a iffy. I think Baylor still have Jerry Bohannon. I think they're losing to Baylor this year. So I got them losing to Baylor. So I have they're losing to Baylor, they're losing to Oklahoma State, and they're losing to Alabama. So I think that Texas will go 9-3 this year. I got Texas going 9-3 this year. So let's go over to Oklahoma. Oklahoma, guys. Oklahoma has Dylan Gabriel. If you don't know who Dylan Gabriel is, he's the quarterback. He was the quarterback for University of Central Florida. Those guys in Orlando, you know, my peeps in Orlando, they know about him real well. This guy had 26 starts. He had 90 touchdowns and 8,000 passing yards. Their offensive lineman from Cal, they got an offensive lineman from Cal. He had over 17,000 snaps in his career, so he is pretty experienced and he's really good. Now, this is one of the few players that left when Lincoln Riley left, Marvin Mims. If you don't know who Marvin Mims is probably one of the best wide receivers in the Big 12. I would put Marvin Mims in the top 3 at wide receiver in the Big 12. Marvin Mims was Mr. Texas football in 2019. Oklahoma do have young tight ends. You know, they do pretty good with their tight ends. Now, my question is the offensive line and their defense. They're only returning 4 starters on their defense, and let's not forget, Oklahoma defense was never that good. You know, they was never in the best defense in the Big 12. They was not even a top 5 defense in the Big 12. The top 3 defense in the Big 12 was probably Kansas State, Oklahoma State, and Baylor, and Iowa State. Top four defense in the Big 12: Oklahoma State, Baylor, Iowa State, and Kansas State. But Oklahoma needs to improve their defense and their offensive line. So let's go look at their schedule. Okay, so Oklahoma's schedule, I got them playing UTEP, University of Texas in El Paso. They will beat them. Kent State, they will beat Kent State. Nebraska has not done anything since the early 2000s. They will beat Nebraska. Kansas State, well, let's go back to Nebraska. When they had Udamika Sue, they was pretty good. They did beat Texas that year. Let's go to Kansas State. I think they'll beat Kansas State. TCU, I think they'll beat TCU. Texas, this is a big game. And like I said earlier, I think that Texas if they ever want to beat Oklahoma, right now in this present time, I think this would be the year when they are rebuilding a little bit. But I don't think Oklahoma will have much drop off. This would be a very good game between Texas and Oklahoma, and I probably have Texas beating Oklahoma by 3 points or a touchdown. It will be very close. Kansas, I think they'll beat Kansas. Iowa State, I think they will beat Iowa State, but I have a loss that Iowa State will beat them because Iowa State is very good at home, guys. Iowa State is very good at home. They only lost one game at home last year, and they have those two impact player defensive players on their team. Baylor, I think they will lose to Baylor at home. West Virginia away, I think they'll go to West Virginia and beat West Virginia. Oklahoma State, yeah, they're losing Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State, like I said, I picked Oklahoma State to win the Big 12 this year. Texas Tech, they will beat Texas Tech. So I have Oklahoma going 9 and I have them going 8-4 this year. Oklahoma will go 8-4 this year. Let's go to Oklahoma State. Now, this is something that's very interesting to me. I know you guys are wondering why I have Oklahoma State winning the Big 12 this year. Well, Spencer Sanders was Mr. Texas Football 2017. Spencer Sanders is one of the returning starters for Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State is a very good team. Last year, if you look at Oklahoma State's schedule last year, they beat a lot of good teams, guys. They beat they beat a lot of good teams. They beat Oregon. That was a big win in that bowl game. When they beat Oregon, that was a big win. I mean, they beat Oregon. Where is it? 47-32 in that bowl game. I'm sorry. They beat Notre Dame in that bowl game. Oklahoma beat Oregon in the bowl game. They beat Notre Dame. They beat Notre Dame 37-35. That was a good game as well. I mean, that's a good team. Also, when we talk about their impact running back, Dominic Richardson, he will be starting this year. Jalen Bray and Braden Johnson will be starting. Now, defense, they have a deep linebacker group and a deep safety group. They returning 7 starters on their offense and 5 starters on their defense. They have a strong defensive front. And also, they have the winningest coach in Big 12 right now. So, and he's one of the best coaches in the college football right now. So, let's go to their schedule. They're playing Central Michigan November. They're playing Central Michigan in September the 3rd. They will beat them. They're playing Alabama State. They will beat Alabama State. They're playing Arkansas Pine Bluff. They're beating Arkansas Pine Bluff. I think that, they're just scheduling these guys so no one can get injured. They're playing these weak teams so they can have a 3-0 record. I think they'll be 3-0 before they play Baylor. Now, they play Baylor the first conference game of the season. This will be a big game because these are the two best teams in the Big 12, Baylor and Oklahoma State. Baylor is away. They play Baylor away. This is a gimme right here, guys. I think Jerry Bohannon would probably beat them this year. So I got them losing to Baylor. Away. Now, when we get to the Big 12 championship, it'll be different. I think they'll play Baylor in the Big 12 championship and beat them in the Big 12 championship. Texas Tech. They playing Texas Tech University. They will beat them. They playing TCU next game. They will beat TCU. They're playing Texas at home. I think they would barely beat Texas because, like I said, Texas will make a lot of improvements this year. Kansas State University, I think they'll beat Kansas State. Kansas, I think they'll beat Kansas. Iowa State, if they play Iowa State away, I think Iowa State will have a good chance to beat them. But Iowa State is not that good away. They really good at home, so I think that'll be a win for Oklahoma State. Oklahoma, there will be a year that they beat Oklahoma, and West Virginia they will beat West Virginia. So I got Oklahoma State going 11-1. 11-1. Now, let's go to the top 5 coaches of the Big 12. The top 5 coaches in the Big 12. Dave Aranda. Dave Aranda is, if those guys in Wisconsin, they know about Dave Aranda. Dave Aranda was the defensive coordinator at Wisconsin. Also, he was the defensive coordinator at LSU. Now he's the head coach at Baylor. He's been the head coach at Baylor for the last 2 seasons. Guys, this guy can coach, man. Me being a Florida Gator fan, also like Mississippi State and Jackson State, as you can see the shades and the hat. But, I wish instead of Florida Gators getting Billy Napier, I wish they would have went after Dave Aranda. But, hey, I hope Billy Napier the best. I think he'll be doing well for Florida based on what he did this offseason. But the first season Dave Aranda had for Baylor, he went 2-7. That was terrible. That was the COVID season as well. Now, last season, Baylor went 12-2, and they won the Big 12. That is a big turnaround. If I'm wrong about Oklahoma State winning the Big 12, it would definitely be Baylor. Baylor will win the Big 12 if Oklahoma State does not win the Big 12. You can book that. Let's go to the second best coach in the Big 12, Mike Gundy. Mike Gundy is the second best coach at Oklahoma State. He has a 149-69 record at Oklahoma State. He's been a part of Oklahoma State football program since 2001. He's been the head coach since 2005. And he has a Big 12 championship in 2011. The third best coach in the Big 12, I have Matt Campbell. Matt Campbell is definitely a good coach. Iowa State head football coach. He has only lost 4 home games in the last 3 seasons at Iowa State. Iowa State is very good at home. But the thing about Matt Campbell is that he could never get over the hump. The year before last year, I think they won the Big 12. I think Iowa State won the Big 12 the year before last year. But this season was a big disappointment. A lot of the bettors had bet Iowa State, put their money on Iowa State, and they disappointed the fan base. When they went on the road, Iowa State was not good at all. But when they was at home, they was very good. So the thing about them getting over the hump, I think Iowa State would have to be very good on the road, if you know what I'm saying. The fourth best coach, I think that Steve Sarkisian for Texas is the fourth best coach in the Big 12 Conference. Now, he can move up. He can pass Matt Campbell, but he will have to produce in the Big 12. The main thing I got him at number 4 is because of his recruiting skills. I mean, this guy is recruiting some of the best recruiters in the college football. Quinn Evers and those other guys. He also just recruited the Manning kid, Arch Manning. Arch Manning was the recent recruit. He just recruited. That's a big deal, guys. Last year, Texas went 5-7. But this season, they had a top 5 recruiting class. So, I think they'll have a better season this year. I think Texas will be a lot better this season. 5A and 5B. This is how I got 5A and 5B. I have Kansas State coach Chris Kleiman. He is a bad recruiter, but is a good player developer. He went 8-5 last year for Kansas State. Now, Brett Variables. Brett Variables is the head coach right now for Oklahoma Sooners. This guy can only go up. The sky's the limit for this guy. Like I said, Oklahoma will not have a big drop-off this year. Now, teams might have a good game against those guys, but you know what I'm saying? But he's a first-year head coach, and he did handle the transfer portal pretty well. I think getting that UCF quarterback was a big deal. Okay, so those are my top 6 coaches in the Big 12. So, like I said, I will rank these guys again. This is my Big 12 rankings. I think Oklahoma State will be 1 in the Big 12 this year. Baylor will be 2nd. Iowa State will be 3rd. I'm sorry, this is my defensive ratings last year. My Big 12 defensive rankings last year. Defensive-wise, Oklahoma State had the best defense in the Big 12. 2nd was Baylor. 3rd was Iowa State. 4th was Kansas. 5th was West Virginia. 6th was Oklahoma. And Texas was 7th. So Kansas State had a pretty good defense. They were 4th in defense last year. In the Big 12, this is my ranking for the Big 12. I think that Oklahoma State would be 1st in the Big 12. Baylor would be 2nd. I'm fighting between Oklahoma and Texas for 3rd spot, but I think Oklahoma will be 3rd, Texas will be 4th, and Iowa State will be 5th in the Big 12. These are key players that I want to mention in the Big 12. You got Byron Robinson, Xavier Worthy, Will McDonald, Jerry Bohannon, Dylan Gabriel, Marvin Mims, Xavier Hutchinson, and Quentin Johnson. If you don't know who Quentin Johnson is, he was a freshman last year for TCU, and he set all of TCU wide receiver records as a wide receiver. So these are some good impact players in the Big 12. I'm not a real Big 12 fan. I'm just going over the line of what I think about the Big 12. So like I said, guys, if you like the video, go ahead and subscribe me. Follow me on Instagram at drmega.rw, drmega.rw. And thanks again for watching, guys. I appreciate it. Thank you.